Alright, so I did more work today on the arm. Today I got the gearbox mostly built. As you can see, it's gotten pretty crazy in there. So as we had before, we've got these two are driving the shoulder joint. They've got the worm gear, and then those are driving 12 tooth pinions, and then this middle gear is just an idler, and then it's driving the 60 tooth bearing for a 5 times gear reduction for this. And then I'm not entirely sure what these are running. I think it's, if I had to guess, it's close to 20. The shoulder joint is moving with pretty good speed. Then we have this one, and then that goes down to here. This is controlling the elbow joint. So that one goes to those gear pairs. That one has a weird gear ratio. It ends up being around 7 or 8 before it gets to the worm gears. So it goes there, it cuts over to the other side through the idler gears, and then we have more worm wheels. So the elbow joint is also running off of 2 of the 393 motors. And finally, this one is the wrist joint, or the pitch control. And that comes to here, comes over to here through an idler gear, and then we've got the 12 tooth pinion right there, and then that's running to another worm gear assembly. As you can tell, I like the worm gears. Basically, they absolutely slow down the system a whole lot, but they give a ton of extra torque off of the motors. And there's also another very important principle at work for why they're useful on an arm like this, and that's because the worm gears cannot be back driven under normal circumstances. So when you've got an arm and it's sticking, all the way out, there's a lot of torque on the motors, and if I didn't have the worm gears, there's a chance that these would start drifting down, and it would be back driving the motor. So this just helps me keep the system from getting back driven, and it just sacrifices the speed for that. I haven't hooked up either of those two yet, but I wrote a fun little multitasking program, and I've got buttons for controlling. I'll straighten. This one toggles direction between the shoulder joints. This one toggles directions between the elbow, and then this one is the pitch. And then just for fun, I also threw on the yaw. So I've got this set up right now. If I push down on both of these at the same time, this should move coordinated between both of those. So as you can see, they're actually timed together fairly well for their range of motion. So that stayed at about the same height up until the very end, which is that's actually a really good test, because one of the most common applications that you might run with a robot like this is picking and placing. And if you have to be constantly worrying about whether your motors are moving at about the same speed, then I mean, for the size of this arm, it's really not a terrible rate of motion. And we can make it go up. That's elbow joint by itself. So we'll stick this straight out and I'll show you the little torque test. Actually, let's raise that back up for a sec. And then wrist joint. The wrist joint is really slow compared to all the other ones. At least it just feels that way. Which is weird. It has, I think it's got about the same gear ratio as on the elbow joint, but the wrist joint only has one motor on it, whereas the other two have two motors. So then let's go shoulder joint. So that one's kind of making it struggle just a little bit, but that's the hard part right there. And then, oh yeah, one last thing. So there you have it. So the yaw is working just fine, and if the yaw is working, I'm almost positive that linear slide base is going to work too. I didn't set that one up yet because I've got so many wires all just laying around right now that it's too hard to control it right now, especially since I don't have an encoder working for it yet. But I believe really the main thing I need to do now is just I guess the next step aside from testing out that stuff, which I'm very certain it's going to work at this point, I need to incorporate the sensors onto it, which I'm going to have to add on a couple more things to this gearbox, which I already kind of planned on, but I am basically out of parts at this point. I've ran out of this size of screw, so I can't really attach any more bearings, and I've also run out of shaft collars, so that puts me in a pretty bad position for adding in anything else to this. Yeah, so joints are working, it's just very slow.